Hey, what is going on, military journeyman Julian here, and today I've got my good friend Seaman Llanos. This is Rodrigo Llanos. He just recently graduated Coast Guard boot camp. What boot camp company did you graduate with?
It was a Bravo 19er.
Bravo 19er. So he just graduated. Things are a little bit different right now, especially with COVID. So in this video, we're going to be talking about what is Coast Guard boot camp like during COVID, as well as some of the experience of going through boot camp, the recruiting process of what that is like during COVID, as well as that experience. And then also definitely also going to be talking about the Coast Guard boot camp survival guide, because this is something that Rodrigo actually utilized during his time. So we want to be able to talk about, your experience having, dove into the knowledge, how that maybe assisted you, as well as, the things that you had to learn and what you saw from other people that maybe didn't have, the required knowledge section. Because what we were talking about before was like, you wanted to go to the Coast Guard boot camp and not have to worry about the knowledge. And so you could just focus on the fitness. So definitely going to be talking about that stuff. But please, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself, give us a little background about who you are and what inspired you to join the Coast Guard.
Yeah, definitely. First, I want to say thank you for having me, Julian. It's really awesome to be on the channel. Second, I'm 29 years old. I'm married. I have two beautiful baby girls, and I decided to join the Coast Guard. One, for job security, especially during this COVID era. I realized that I needed something a little bit more secure for my family. Second, I've always been called to serve. I just couldn't find where I wanted to. And I found out that, the Coast Guard is more centered on saving lives. I was kind of pushed and helped by two Coast Guard friends that I have. One is an AET, and he really mentored me through the process, explained to me, what the lifestyle was, sat me down and said, hey, these are the benefits, these are the negatives, and it kind of fit with what my wife and I wanted to do with our future and with the babies, with the girls. So it was a good choice. I'm very happy. I love the Coast Guard, and we're all in. So.
Now, when did you decide to start the process with joining the Coast Guard, and did you run into any challenges with joining?
So I decided to start June of 2019. At that point, I was a permanent resident, and I walked into the recruiter's office, had general questions, and needed to prepare myself for the ASVAB test. So I went through that process. I went through the medical checkup, and I was able to get my citizenship a week before shipping out in September. So everything kind of fell into place.
Did you run into any challenges with the recruiting process?
With the recruiting process, I realized that it's very recommended that one does their own research. As a recruiter, the person is there to help you through the process. But they also, have a number to fill. So it's kind of like a give and take. Make sure that you ask the right questions. Don't leave the recruiter's office without being 100% sure what you're getting yourself into, without knowing the process 100%. Try to get a timeline as well. In my case, we needed to have a timeline because of my job, where I was. My first daughter is a year and a half, and we were expecting our second daughter. So I wanted to get that timeline down. Just to do your own research, make sure that you don't have any questions leaving the office. And if you do have questions, reach out to your recruiter, but also reach out to, the community, especially through Military Journeyman and through your channel, through myself, if anybody ever wants to ask a question through Facebook.
Yeah, and just so everybody knows, we have a Facebook group down in the description box. It's the Boot Camp Preppers. So if you're interested in joining the Coast Guard and you have questions, you want to be able to talk to people that are going through the process like yourself. Talk to guys like Rodrigo, who graduated. They have a lot of knowledge and experience. I definitely recommend that you join that group down there. It's free. Just gonna ask questions. We also have some recruiters in there that are taking time out of their schedules that also answer questions. So really good community. What types of questions, Rodrigo, would you recommend people ask? Are there things that obviously we cover a lot of videos on this channel, but were there still some things that maybe you needed to ask your recruiter that you didn't feel so sure about, or that people should be asking maybe in regards to maybe what's going on personally for them?
In regards to the type of questions, I was really expecting more of a larger bonus. I think that if the bonus process would have been explained to me a little bit better, I would have gone a different rate. I want to go HS, but I found out that OS had a very large bonus tied to it while I was in boot camp, and I didn't know that. I would have strongly considered that as a rate just to get that bonus. Also, just make sure that you know the MEPS process, what you're expected to do at MEPS, what documents you need to bring, especially if you're not a citizen. Um, and just coronavirus is changing a lot of things. And when I was going through sieges through the background process, it was the first time that they were doing over the phone interviews. Most of the time it's face to face. So my investigator, he was awesome. He walked me through a process and said, hey, there's nothing to worry about. We're just going to do a general background check on you, and it might take 2 weeks, it might take 2 months, just because of coronavirus. So they're trying to figure all of that out.
Now, you said that you got the process started back in June of 2019, and you just recently graduated. So that was like a year-long process. Was that because of your situation, being a resident and whatever other type of stuff, or is that kind of a normal time frame that people can expect? Like, did you run into any obstacles or things that were preventing you from being able to ship out sooner?
So it was a little bit of both. At first, I wanted to get myself physically ready. I wasn't too worried about the general knowledge part. I'm a bookworm. I'm a crammer. So I like to read. I like to study. But I also like to eat, brownies. I like to eat tacos. So I needed to get my body physically fit for that, especially being on the older side. And then as soon as I was ready, background screen was going to get started, and it was going to be a much quicker process. Coronavirus hit, and that was February, March of the beginning of this year. I was supposed to go to boot camp back in May, but my date got pushed out just because Cape May was trying to figure out everything with the amount of recruits that they were going to be accepting. So
Okay. Now, so you went through your process. Is there anything else that you wanted to cover before, getting on the bus? Like how much, I guess maybe one of the also questions is like, how much time did you spend studying? Because, Coast Guard recruiters will give you the helmsman, right? And they expect you to study that. At which point was it like, hey, I'm going to purchase the book. I'm going to, maybe learn a little bit more than what's readily available. And also, do the recruiters tell you like, hey, you're going to need to know all of this other stuff? Or was that only because of you, hearing about what we talk about on the channel?
So yes, I got the helmsman from my recruiter. And as I started just reading through different boards and posts online, I realized that there was a lot more to general knowledge that I didn't know what that was. Manual of arms, safety regulations, recruit comms, all those things were foreign to me. And so I did some more research. That's how I came onto your YouTube channel. And you had mentioned that you were preparing a book. You finally put the book out, and it helped me out tremendously. It basically has everything that you need to know in regards to required knowledge. It has some personal experiences as well from yourself, Julian, and the recruit comms part, the rates and ranks. I don't think that there's a cleaner textbook for rates and ranks than yours. So it helped me out tremendously. I memorized all of that before going to boot camp because I didn't want to worry about general knowledge. I wanted to worry about, making sure that I took care of my body and making sure that my body could be exerted for those 8 weeks. So it helped out a lot.
Yeah, definitely. I don't want to make this like a super long sales pitch for the book, but I really want people to understand what the recruiters give you in the helmsman. It's very thin and there's not a lot of information. So like, can you compare like the information that like if you had just studied what was in the helmsman, and some people don't even study that, but if you just study what was in the helmsman versus like the additional information, like that advanced knowledge section and some of the advanced basic knowledge stuff, how do you feel that you would have been prepared going into boot camp?
So the best way I can explain it is the helmsman is step one of 10 steps. It gives you the vague background of your general orders, vague background of rates and ranks, and just a vague background of what you can expect throughout the weeks. Um, your book is, step 10. It goes into detail, how you need to answer it, how you need to respond, what to expect in recruit comms, how to properly answer for the rates and ranks, how to properly answer for, your everyday recruit comms, what not to say, what can you say, the manual of arms, your piece nomenclature, all that stuff that's not mentioned in the helmsman. So it really goes in depth into what you can expect at boot camp.
So definitely, we'll talk more about some of like what you saw, but want to move forward from here. So you're going to boot camp now. What was that process like? With everything that is happening with COVID, were like the buses empty, or like is there only like 6 people in your company? Like how does this all work now?
So the morning of MEPS, you typically spend the day before at a hotel. They take your temperature. You are shuttled to MEPS for processing. They process you. You get on an airplane and you arrive to the Philadelphia USO, and it's very separated. They don't really allow you to be too close to anybody else. When you get on the bus, you're typically in the seat by yourself. You're wearing a mask the whole time. You get to Cape May, and from the video, the most recent video that came out about coronavirus and it being sort of like a calmer experience, they've they've changed that into a little bit more of the regular. So the company commander will get on the bus. They will start screaming. They will receive you. They will start giving you orders. You do need to be quick. You do need to be fast. You do need to have your ears open. You are taken into one of the halls, one of the buildings, and that squad bay that you're in is basically the only thing you're going to see for the next 17 days. You are matched up with a rack mate. So somebody that was on the bus is now, it's tied to your shoulder. Basically everything that you guys do together. You go to the restroom together. You guys have lunch, grab your lunch together. You guys will do PT together. You guys walk around together. Cape May is great at keeping everything clean, organized, and squared away, sectored. So I really didn't have too much worry about, if I was going to contract coronavirus while being there. I was really just more worried about my rack mate to see if, where he was previously, if he had been exposed and things like that. So you're in that squad bay. You are given boxed lunches. You receive, breakfast, lunch, dinner. Breakfast and dinner is amazing. Lunch, be prepared for it not to be the best. I still have friends there, and I still have friends that are stationed at Cape May, and they say that the recruits are still getting basically just a meat log wrapped in bread. And it's it's funny, but it's also sad at the same time because after after day 10 and you have the same thing for lunch, it kind of gets to you. You start thinking to yourself, did I make the right decision? Is this what I want? Is this what the Coast Guard is like on the outside? So it's you have to go mentally prepared as well to know that there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and there really is a light at the end of the tunnel.
Wow, that's pretty shocking because the galley, it's like the galley always had pretty good food. Cape May is pretty top notch. But you're saying that like throughout all of boot camp, you're eating boxed food.
So breakfast and dinner is boxed. It is pretty good. Breakfast is your typical breakfast that you get in the galley. Dinner is your typical dinner that you get in the galley. Lunch, it comes in a plastic bag, and it's basically the sandwich, chips, a drink, and water, chewy bar, and that part just really gets to you. But yes, you are right. The galley food at Cape May is delicious. I loved it. The galley staff are angels. They're great. So, but that lunch during ROM, it gets to you.
And I mean, with that, because I remember like one of the beauties of the galley was also the PB&J station. Just like if you were hungry and you wanted to keep eating, you just keep on going back for more. I mean, if you're doing all boxed lunches and stuff, I mean, what are the sizes are probably all the same, and there's probably not like maybe as much as you typically could. Like if you're a really hungry person or you need more calories, like how does that work?
That's correct. So if you need more calories, you ask around and say, "Hey, do you want that bag of chips? Are you going to eat that apple?" Um, that's how you get more food. But um, yeah, there's no variety. You kind of are stuck with what you're given. The only difference is if you can't eat pork, just for religious reasons or personal reasons, they do provide you different meals. I don't know what that is. I do know that peanut butter and jelly was involved sometime around there, but that's all I know.
Okay. I'm sure that we could talk a lot about the food, but let's talk about that those first 2 weeks. You're paired with a person by the hip, and you were talking about this thing called ROM. Can you kind of explain what that is?
Yeah, so it's restriction of movement. It's basically Cape May's answer to COVID. It's been modified. My CC told me it was modified 18 times since it started. So they're really doing their best to respond. This is hearsay, but it is probably 100% true. Before, you had 2 weeks where you didn't know who your company commanders were. You were sort of babysat by a couple company commanders, a couple reservists. The week that I left, the company that had just came in was received by their company commanders. So they were seeing their CCs every day on a normal basis. Of course, keeping 6 foot distance, making sure that everything was kept clean, hand sanitizer was used, the face mask, the whole shebang. But you do get that shock and awe a lot quicker than the last companies that came since COVID started. You're basically in your squad bay, uh, learning required knowledge, getting recruit comms down to a T. Um, you're in your PT clothes every day. You do have a rack. You're expected to keep it clean. I don't believe that they're doing rack inspections yet. They might be. That might be something that has had changed. And you're taking out to the parade field or some classroom to have some sort of difference in your routine, but most of your time is going to be spent in your squad bay.
How does that kind of affect you mentally? I mean, eating, the same food maybe every day, being in the same room for that long. Like what did you see like a lot of people dropping out like during those first couple weeks, or like what is the mentality and the state of mind of people? Because like you know pre-COVID, probably post-COVID, there's there's more movement, there's more activities, you're changing classrooms, you're moving around, seeing different things, but you know, being stuck in a room for that long, what is the mind state like of people?
Yeah, so I was at Sexton Hall. Sexton Hall has 2 floors and 4 squad bays. I was in Charlie Squad Bay, and luckily our squad bay, most of us stayed together. We went through the mental process together. But other squad bays, they lost. What I mean by lost is, people quit or asked to be sent home, or one person got injured, they slipped and fell in the shower. Um, but they lost like half of their company, just because they couldn't deal with that being in that same area. It wasn't. So you go to boot camp mentally prepared to be screamed at to do physical. It's you're not exerted as physically. You're not yelled at as much. You're not required to be a full recruit until at the end of the 17 days. So yeah, a lot of people asked to be sent home. Um, you're looking out through the window, and you see other companies, marching or doing PT, and every day it's something different. When you look out and you're like, man, I wish I was doing that. I wish I was doing that. And then when you get to it, you're like, man, I wish I was in ROM. I wish I was in ROM. So it's always just a mental battle. So
The grass is always greener on the other side type of deal.
yeah.
Till you realize what's over there. Okay, so but you said that there's a lot of people within like even the first 2 weeks. You said there was a company that dropped half of the people in the first 2 weeks,
Yeah,
and that's not a normal thing, in boot camp, right?
it's not. I'm guessing they just it wasn't what they expected, and they thought that that was going to be Coast Guard life outside of Coast Guard, outside of boot camp. And they just didn't stay in for it.
So what advice would you give to the people that are at that first couple weeks that are put into this ROM situation, and maybe things kind of seem like maybe bleak for them?
Get through it. Work together as a team, with your rack mate, especially, and with everybody that's in your squad bay. Um, get through it. If you're not being PT too much, so if you're not doing your physical exercises that you think you need to do to stay fit, do it anyways. Do your push-ups, do your sit-ups. You can't run, but stay focused that way, because it's basically like, think of it this way: you're at the beach, you're standing on the sand, and you see giant waves just coming. Those giant waves is week 3, the end of ROM. So as soon as you get into the water, those waves will start, hitting your body, making you roll. You have to swim faster. But while you're on the sand, it's, a beautiful thing to see, and it's calm. And so just be prepared, and get through it.
So you would say that the first 2 weeks is more preparing you for week 3?
Correct.
Okay. So what are the first 2 weeks like? Is it more heavy on the knowledge? Is it more heavy on the physical activity, or is there not really either? Like, how would you describe those first 2 weeks?
Yeah, the first 2 weeks is definitely heavy on the knowledge. You are expected to know, I want to say maybe 70 or 80% of they call it the recruit manual. So it's a packet this thick, and it has in there your recruit comms, um, your general orders, piece nomenclature, seamanship terminology, fire safety rules, your firearm safety rules, your fire tetrahedron, all that stuff you're required to know as soon as you hit week 3. So
Wow. So that's what's pretty different with when I went through, or maybe how they do it now. Maybe just because you spend less time in the classrooms. I'm not sure. But like before, it was like at certain weeks you'd have to memorize this stuff. But you're saying within the first 2 weeks. the first 2 weeks for me was like you have to know your helmsman, so like, your general orders. You start to learn how to communicate, but you never really figure it out until like later on. Probably week 3. And there's some other small things, but you're saying you got to know fire tetrahedron, piece nomenclature, all of this stuff within the first 2 weeks.
It helps out greatly. You want to hit week 3, and you don't want the company commanders to be able to, focus on you. You want to be able to exceed and have that required knowledge down by the time you hit week 4. Because the sooner, you are noticed as somebody who can communicate correctly, can answer correctly, the less attention you're going to get. And that's probably what you want. So you're given that time to study.
So that those first 2 weeks is really kind of like your study time, and they're coming in there and they're PTing you, not doing runs and stuff, but you're still doing some PT work in there.
Yeah, the PT is stretching, some push-ups, some sit-ups. Mostly it's just light stretching. That's really it.
Oh wow! So it's so that no one's yelling at you. You're not doing hours of some IT PT. Instead of training, it's all just study, stretch. That whole time.
That's correct. Yes, and that might have changed now that company commanders sort of receive the ROMers.
Yeah.
But it might not, because they still can't, get in your face and tell you to push the earth faster or, scream louder, things like that.
So what was that? So week 3 happens. What is week 2 to week 3 like?
So that's forming week. For a lot of people, it's shock and awe. You're given your ODUs, your operational dress uniform. You're given your gear. You're given your piece. You have, to now maintain your rack. You have to meet time objectives. You're moving a lot faster. You're screaming at the top of your lungs. You're getting PT'd at least, 3 to 4 times a day. And it's not the PT that you saw in ROM. It's, burpees, it's mountain climbers, it's planks, side planks, it's sit-ups, it's push-ups. What else? You have the company commander right here in your face. All of that changes, and you're more focused on trying to get your bearing, and then they switch it on you, they do rack changes, or they take you from one squad bay and take you to another, and you have to figure it all out again, because you really have to focus on working with your shipmates, with your company. You guys have to work as a team. The faster that gets done, the easier it will be.
What was that transition like for your company or most companies that you saw? Was there like a lot of people dropping out at that point at week 3?
Yeah. So some people got reverted because they didn't have the required knowledge, their general orders down. Other people got reverted because they were put on probation and just couldn't take the stress of having that focus. Recruit comms, some people got reverted for that. Some people did just drop out because they just couldn't find their bearing. They figured out that the Coast Guard was not for them. So it's don't be discouraged if you go to boot camp and you're looking to your left and you're looking to your right and you see empty racks when there were people there the day before. That means you're doing something good. That means you're one step closer. So don't get discouraged.
And I know it's maybe a little early. You just reported to your first station. You've been out of boot camp for about a week now. But that feeling of like, did I make, is the Coast Guard the right fit for me? What would you say to those people that, transition, or are feeling that way, one that maybe it's like a shock factor, those 2 weeks of ROM, but then your first week where it's just like, well, this is very different than what was before. Like, what would you give, or how would you talk to people that are maybe questioning, like, is the Coast Guard, is this really the Coast Guard, or did I make the right choice?
So boot camp is not what you see on the outside. Boot camp is not the Coast Guard. Boot camp is meant to prepare you for the most extreme cases. It's to be, and my company commander put it the best way. It's supposed to make you physically fit and basically prepared. That's what it is. It's basically it's just the base. After that, you start building on top of that, and you build in an environment where this is station life, where your peers want to help you out, where you want to get qualified, where you can talk to an MK3 or BM1, and they're not going to be yelling at you, to respond correctly, to be at attention, thumbs pointed down, fingers brushing fabric kind of thing. It's more relaxed. You definitely get to feel like you're working in your career and not for the military, if that makes sense.
So after after that first week, what was week 3 to week 4 like?
Week 3 to week 4, you start to mesh together a little bit more as a company. You're given a lot more responsibility. You're expected to perform a lot better, your time objectives. One of the key factors that I saw was the sneakers, the go fasters to the boondockers transition. So week 1, week 2, you're in go fasters. All day, that's what you do. You put on your shoes and that's what you're wearing. Week 3 and 4, eventually in one of those days, you're allowed to wear your boondockers. You're actually required to wear your boondockers. And it's another part of the physical training where you do PT with your boots on. So you're doing, leg races or flutter kicks, sit-ups, you're running because you're getting to your squad bay where you need to move fast. You're running with your boots on. So that's a major change. You also rely a lot more on your squad leaders. We had great squad leaders. You rely more on your squad leaders, communication. You see more of a chain of command inside of your company through the petty officers that have jobs. So the yeomen are, actively answering your questions, scheduling wise. The squad leaders, tell you, hey, we need to do this next. We need to move this stuff. We need to, work like as a team. You have your laundry captains, you have your safety petty officers, your supply petty officers, all that stuff, which is in your book, comes into play, and you start seeing that more, that your company gets organized. That's week 3 and 4. Oh, you start classes as well. More, you're giving classes in week 1 and 2 of regular boot camp, but week 3 and 4, you're given the cool classes, seamanship. You start thinking about your picks for, where you want to go in the boot camp in the Coast Guard. So all of that, it's week 3 and 4.
And so from week 4 to week 5, what was that like?
That's the pinnacle of boot camp. Everybody who's gone to boot camp and has gotten that far knows that, search and rescue week, that's where you need to be on point with everything. You need to really move fast. You need to really be loud. Focus on helping out your rack mates, your shipmates. If one of you fails, you all fail. And, if Bravo Company is watching this, they might giggle, but they know in their heart that it's 100% true. We really mesh together as a unit, week 5. And, everything just, it gets to the most difficult point, and then it gets a lot smoother after that.
And when you say it gets to the most difficult, like if you could paint a picture in people's head, like what can they expect? Because that week, is always kind of talked about. Week 3 to week 4 is kind of like your learning phase of kind of what it's like with your CCs. Those first 2 weeks is usually kind of still preparation for once you get your CCs, but then week 4, week 5 is kind of like you're at the peak now. So how would you paint a picture in people's minds of what that is like, and what are the most common things that get people reverted, or if they, or even kicked out of boot camp?
So week 5 is waking up at 5:30 and it's just go 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 go. You're required to meet those time objectives. There's excuse me, there's no more leniency. If even if there was any in boot camp, there's zero tolerance for being late for your time objectives. You need to perform the task at that time. You need to everything that you were taught in the first 2 weeks, that needs to be close to perfection or not, or even perfection. So your recruit comms, you can't say something like Petty Officer Coons, Senior Recruit Llanos. That will definitely get you noticed on the spot and either put up for probation or put up for ramp, which will probably eventually lead into being reverted. What else? You definitely need to have your rack perfect, as perfect as possible. You need to have your general knowledge down. Your galley procedures, all of that needs to be close to perfection. Your close order drill, your piece nomenclature, all that stuff. Week 5, it has to be close to perfect. You're moving a lot faster. You are probably going to lose your voice, and you will find your second voice, your voice that will be with you for the rest of your career, and you need to be loud with that voice.
So you're saying that you're always going to sound like this now?
Yeah, basically. Basically.
You still have the boot camp, the rough voice. So
Yes. It's
but
been a month and it's still trying to work its way to normal, but it just won't go back. So I'm getting used to it.
it'll probably go back. It'll probably go back. But
My
yeah,
wife likes
I
it,
get.
so.
Yeah, you sound very masculine. You sound very tough. So what are the common things that you see people fail during week 5? I guess what are the common things that you see people fail during week 5?
Rack inspections is a big thing. You need to have, attention to detail is key. You need to have things in the place where they need to be. Don't think, oh, I can do this later. No, do it now. Take the time to do it now and do it quick and do it fast and do it the right way. Recruit comms was also a big thing. The amount of stress and pressure that you're under and you're required to perform at a certain way. If you run across a company commander that's not yours, and they don't know your story or your background, you could be, chopped up and said, on your performance tracker, does not know recruit comms, or improper greeting to a senior junior officer. That's something that will definitely get you in trouble, or if not reverted on the spot. No messing around at all, especially, horseplay. Our section commander said smoking and joking. No smoking and joking. No leaning on a rack and being all nonchalant and relaxed. That stuff will get you reverted on the spot.
So week 3 to week 4, 4 to 5, are those 2 weeks pretty similar?
Yes and no. You're taught a lot of stuff in week 3 and week 4, and you're expected to apply that knowledge in week 5.
So you said during those first 2 weeks, which is you're given that whole booklet, which is a little bit different because, like I said, when the way that it used to be, it would be like, okay, you're expected to know your helmsman stuff by like by the time you get your CCs in like around week 2, week 3. But you're saying you got to learn a lot of extra stuff during that time. Like how much time do you have to really be able to study and learn additional stuff during week 3 to week 5?
Very little, very little. You're given other tasks or you're required to do other things. And the time that you think, oh, I'm going to be able to learn this, later tomorrow or by this afternoon. No, 100% no. You want to be able to focus on what is to come and not focus on, homework that you have to do or things that you have to study that you didn't learn. It'll make your life in boot camp a lot easier. You're given roughly 5 to 10 minutes to complete tasks at different intervals. And in those tasks, there's always curveballs, or you need to work with a shipmate, or you need to work with as a company. And sometimes it just doesn't work out. And then you get sweated or you get beat or you have to do PT. And then it happens all over again. They give you the same tasks and you don't meet the requirement. And then you go back into getting sweated. You go back into doing PT. So you really don't have much time.
I mean, because you came into boot camp and you knew everything that was in the survival guide. What did you like when you reached week 5? Were you worried about like any of the general knowledge or like any of that advanced knowledge stuff? Like how was that for you compared to people that you saw that didn't, maybe they just learned the helmsman, or maybe they were struggling with even, learning that before they got into boot camp? If you kind of give the perspective of like someone that has, didn't study at all, someone that learned just what was given to them at that specific time. So like the helmsman and then that giant binder versus you, having all of that knowledge from that binder just compressed into, some more condensed version.
Yeah. So, I'm going to start with me. I memorized your book and most of the required knowledge. I want to say about 90% of the required knowledge before I even got on the plane. And that helped me out a lot. If you have a general knowledge, so if know your helmsman and you have an idea of rates and ranks, you're probably going to be picked on a lot more by the company commanders. Just because they want you to feel that pressure that you have to learn your rates and ranks. You have to learn how to properly communicate. And then if you're one of those that, gets on the plane to boot camp and you have zero knowledge, or even worse, week 3 and you have very little knowledge, then you're going to be definitely the ones that are on red belt, go to ramp, or get reverted, on the spot. And it kind of just sucks when you see your company advance and you get pushed back 1 week or sometimes even 2 weeks.
I mean, during those first 2 weeks, though, cannot everybody like learn everything that they need? Like the stuff that you learned from the book. Is that those first 2 weeks enough time for you to be able to cram everything that you need to be prepared for weeks 3 and 4?
Yes, you definitely can. If you have that mentality, and my shipmate Thompson, he learned that stuff. Pierce, my rackmate, he was very good with general knowledge, and he went with the basic knowledge. I definitely saw shipmates learn 90% of their general knowledge in weeks 1 and 2, and come out of boot camp okay, or go through boot camp okay.
So like during those first 2 weeks, like they even had to memorize like the piece nomenclature, the fire tetrahedron, like all of that stuff, or was that stuff that they were still trying to memorize along the way?
Let me make a correction. You don't have to memorize your piece nomenclature, but in regular boot camps, so in weeks 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, you really are not given much time to study your piece nomenclature. So they expect you to, in the first 2 weeks, grab as much knowledge as possible. So the last couple of days of ROM, we were already, our Charlie Squad Bay was already reciting the piece nomenclature by memory. And that helped us out with not having to focus on knowing your piece nomenclature later on down the road.
Right. Yeah, I think it's important. Lots of people, they go through boot camp. I was one of those people. I think I just studied like the general orders and stuff like that. But I definitely struggled throughout boot camp with attention to detail. There's a lot of things that was just like it didn't click with me. But that's good that you at least you had that knowledge, and you actually said that you were teaching other people in your squad bay like how to the general knowledge and the stuff that you learned that they weren't familiar with.
Yeah, thankfully, they allowed me to help them out, to teach them the seriousness of what they were getting into. A lot of people thought it was going to be, like a summer camp. Um, and then also allow me to help them out with the required knowledge, how they needed to communicate, um, what was the proper terminology, gold chevrons, 02 joined silver bars. Some people are just like, oh, those silver things. No, you don't want to respond the two silver things. That won't go well.
Do they teach you during those first 2 weeks like how you're supposed to communicate and like how you're supposed to learn the knowledge, or do they just give you that and then it's just like figure it out on your own?
They give you the recruit handbook. I can't remember the name of it, but the recruit handbook that's this thick. You're given one class on it, and then they're like, okay, you're good to go, and you probably will be required to already know it. So asking questions, or knowing how to communicate correctly before going to boot camp is a major help.
Going back to it, so week 5, you finish week 5, and then what is week 6 to week 7 like?
So week week 6 is our week 8. So we did the first 2 weeks in ROM. Our 6th week of regular boot camp is our last week in boot camp. So those are the 8 weeks. So the first 2 weeks, and then you have the regular boot camp for 6 weeks. Our week 6 is completely different. It's a 180. You see your company commanders in a different light. You have a more clear idea of what Coast Guard is going to be on the outside world. You're probably given desserts at the galley, which is a plus. You have what's called your colors. Once you get your colors, things really change for the company. There's not too much PT. You're more focused about getting from Cape May to your unit. You have more time to communicate with family, to, travel arrangements, get all of that planned out. So that's week 6, which for us is our last week, for people going through COVID, because they don't count the first 2 weeks.
They don't count the first 2 weeks. So the first 14 days, they don't count that. So boot camp is kind of like 6 weeks, or it's
so boot camp is still the full 8 weeks. So you're in Cape May for 8 weeks. You're expected to be in Cape May for 8 weeks. The first 2 weeks of those 8 weeks, you're in ROM, where you are not 100% plugged into what boot camp really is. Week 3, and you're in forming week. So you form as a company, you meet your company commanders, and then you carry on with the rest of regular boot camp 100% week 3, 4, 5, and 6.
Got it. So where, like in the book, we're talking about weeks 1 and 2 is your forming week. Technically, with COVID, week 3 and week 4 is a forming week, but it's like an advanced forming week almost.
Yeah. And once again, that changed the last time that I was, when I was graduating. The company that was coming in was received by their company commanders, which for me, I didn't see my company commanders until the end of week 3, or the beginning of the 4th week that I was there.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. So that's pretty different. Okay. So then you get 1 week with your company commanders. Then, during the week 4 to week 5. Week 5 is just like, gung ho. Everybody, that's the pinnacle. And then after that, it's week 6. But week 6 is also like your week 8, right?
Yes. So the company commanders will ask you, what week are you in? And this is after ROM. And they consider your physical week 3 at Cape May your first week of regular boot camp. So you would respond, week 1, week 01 of boot camp. And they'll be like, okay, so you just formed, and they'll go a little bit easier on you.
Got it. Okay. And at which point then do you find out where you're going to be stationed?
In what is COVID week 5, if I remember correctly. The
So
beginning of week
that's
5.
that's like right during the peak, like when things are getting like real intense. You're finding out like where you're also going.
Yes. Yeah,
Interesting. So
because the previous week you had just submitted your request. You had just filled out your dream sheet.
wow. So that week 3 to week 4 is that your first week, and then week 4 to week 5 you're putting in your dream sheet, and then at the end of week 4, beginning of week 5, you actually find out where you're going to be going, and then that's also where it's the most intense, and you have to be most on point. Did you see? I mean, that must have been like some pretty good motivation, I think, because typically the way that it would work is after that 5th week, then it's like, okay, now we know where we're going. We've earned our colors. Everybody's a little bit better, but you're finding out where you're going when things are just getting the toughest.
Yeah, that's a major motivation for a lot of people. It was a motivation for me. I wanted to, stay close to home, especially for my situation with my girls, with my daughters, and I pushed through.
Nice. So that last week, you're planning. Did you? What would you say to people that are going through this whole process and they're trying to get to the end? Like, was it a super long process for you, or did you feel like it was pretty quick?
Something that my recruiter said that is 100% true is your days are long, your weeks are short. So anytime that you got the chance to look at a calendar and you start counting the days, you're like, man, I'm still here for 49 more days. By the time you realize that those 20 days have passed, you look at the calendar again and you're like, oh, I'm only here for 29 more days. And then by the time you realize 10 more days have passed, oh, it just, it's long days, short weeks. Um, every time you get to Sunday, well, at least for me, divine hours, I knew that, I had reached a milestone, in boot camp because I made it through another week, and I was going to face, another week that I needed to get ready for, prepared for. So
Do you think that boot camp was easier because of COVID, or do you think that it was the same, just a little bit different? Like, yeah, I know that you haven't gone through, I mean, you went through, but it was the weeks and how they kind of play out is a little bit different. But do you think that because of everything that is happening, that it's easier, or they're not as tough, or it's lighter? Like, how would you describe going through boot camp right now?
so the two friends that I have that are in the Coast Guard, and they went to boot camp, pre-COVID, um, they gave me a little bit of their experience at boot camp. In comparison to that, I would say that it is roughly the same, um, because those 8 weeks of normal boot camp are now crammed into 6 weeks. So you're expected to, right off the bat, be a lot faster, be a lot quicker, work together as a company a lot more. They need to cram those 8 weeks into 6 weeks, so they're working harder to get you basically prepared, especially physically fit. Our company did PT 3-4 times a day, all the way up to the week before graduating. So it is what it is, and I'm thankful for that experience. But yeah, it is roughly the same in those 6 weeks.
And what are the big differences? I mean, from what Rom sounds like, it sounds like that's more more spaced out. But you said after you get through ROM, is it just like normal boot camp, or everybody's still having this social distance and more tight, smaller groups? Is it very different?
No, it's still normal boot camp. That social distancing goes away. You're how many people can you fit in the squad bay? About 50 ish. So you're 50 people in the squad bay, where before it was maybe at most 20, um, 18. So the company commanders are now in your face. The only thing that's covering them between you and them is the face mask, but they're still this close. Um, you still get that shock and awe. So
And everybody
No, only in the galley. So all the recruits, whenever they go to the galley, that's when you would put your face mask on, or whenever you would go to the admin building. So basically, whenever you were in contact with people that were either not living on base or civilians, you would have to wear your face mask.
Do you have less time to do your admin stuff because of kind of the crammed uh, boot camp, or is it pretty? You get a good amount of time to be able to plan things and schedule and do all that.
I think that hasn't changed. They want to make sure that you're comfortable with your admin stuff, your travel plans. So for in my case, I think I had plenty of time to do my admin stuff. Um, they really focus on that. The yeomans there are great, and they just want to make sure that you're set before you leave Cape May and go to your first unit.
And what it was graduation like? Were you able to hug your family, and or did everybody have to be social distance and there's a lot of spacing? Were people even allowed to go there?
So no, the week that I left, once again, things might change, but maybe not. No outside visitors. So the people that graduated or that were in the graduation ceremony was our company and on base personnel. So our most of our chain of command and the band, which are also recruits, and that's really it. And we graduated in the gymnasium. How can I say this? It really affected me that my family wasn't there. Um, but that moment of graduation was just, it was a weight lifted off your shoulders. It was really good. You feel great. You're allowed to, shake hands with your shipmates. You're allowed to, hug your shipmates, take pictures and all that stuff. But you still can't shake hands with your company commanders.
Got it. So that whole process where you would shake people's hands, you do your ceremony, and then they basically just kind of shoo you out.
Yep. You don't even get your certificate there. They give you your certificate before. So you're graduating, you're in the ceremony, and you walk in front of them and you just smile and nod. You smile and nod. You don't shake people's hands anymore.
Wow. Oh, very, very interesting. So what parting advice or what parting wisdom experience, if you could share to the people? I know that you've been following the channel for a little while. Is there anything that you recommend, or if you could impart some of your experience to others, what would you like to share?
Definitely. The first, not the first piece of advice is your required knowledge. Know more than what you think is required. It will only help you. It will not, make things difficult for you. The second thing is the quicker you work with your shipmates, the quicker you work as a team, the better off you will be. And then third, don't be discouraged. Don't give up. There's a light at the end of the tunnel. Push through mentally, physically. The rewards are, a lot outweigh the negatives. They're so much more than what you have planned. And just me, I've never done anything like what I did at boot camp, and it gave me another confidence. It gave me the ability to be a better husband, to be a better father, to be a better son, and to have my career down packed. So I'm motivated. I'm ready to go, and it's all thanks to the Coast Guard boot camp.
And so you feel like a pretty different person than from when you went into where you are now.
Yeah, I want to say like 80% changed. Yeah.
Wow. And can you mind sharing kind of what's next? What's your Coast Guard career, your plan? What do you want to do? Stay in, get out? What's Rodrigo going to be doing?
So right now I'm at Station Canaveral, Port Canaveral, and it's great. I'm going to be there for roughly about 2 years until I'm able to go to HS school, my A school. As soon as I graduate HS, figure out where we're going to be moving to. If I can do my 20 years, excellent. It really all depends on the girls and how they feel. Moving every 4 years, I don't want the stress of, moving elementary school, middle school, high school to be that on top of them. So if I can do 20, excellent. If I can't, then I'm going to get out and become a perfusionist, which is something in the medical field that I really want to do. And if I stay the 20, I would either like to look into becoming a PA or a chief warrant officer, if I can, reach one of the two.
Awesome. Rodrigo, thank you so much for coming on here, sharing your experience. It's definitely, congratulations. First off, it's really an accomplishment. A lot of people, and maybe also one last question is, you came in 29 years old. There's a lot of people that, that feel like, maybe they're too old to join the Coast Guard, or maybe, that they're coming, you had your residency, so you weren't a citizen. Maybe they feel like there's outside forces. What would you say to the people that, maybe they feel like it's too late, or that maybe this opportunity isn't for them?
So in my company, there were 3 people that were roughly 29 years old. We were the oldest ones. All 3 of us made it. And some had, were more physically fit than others. Others were more mentally fit than others, but don't allow that to be a limitation. If you want it, you're going to achieve it. Don't let that discourage you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Rodrigo, for taking the time. And until next time, military journeyman, I'll talk to you later.